Ignorance more frequently begets confidence than does knowledge. It is those who know little, not those who know much, who so positively assert that this or that problem will never be solved by science. If I had my life to live over again, I would have made a rule to read some poetry and listen to some music at least once every week. A man who dares to waste 1 hour of time has not discovered the value of life. If the misery of the poor be caused not by the laws of nature, but by our institutions, great is our sin. The love for all living creatures is the most noble attribute of man. We stopped looking for monsters under our bed when we realized that they were inside us. I am not apt to follow blindly the lead of other men. It is not the strongest of the species that survives, not the most intelligent that survives. It is the one that is the most adaptable to change. The mystery of the beginning of all things is insoluble by us, and I for one must be content to remain an agnostic. The highest possible stage in moral culture is when we recognize that we ought to control our thoughts. An American monkey, after getting drunk on brandy, would never touch it again, and thus is much wiser than most men. Intelligence is based on how efficient a species became at doing the things they need to survive. Blushing is the most peculiar and most human of all expressions. One general law, leading to the advancement of all organic beings, namely, multiply, vary, let the strongest live and the weakest die. In the long history of humankind, and animal kind, too, those who learn to collaborate and improvise most effectively have prevailed. Besides love and sympathy, animals exhibit other qualities connected with the social instincts which in us would be called moral. But I am very poorly today and very stupid and I hate everybody and everything. One lives only to make blunders. We must, however, acknowledge, as it seems to me, that man with all his noble qualities, still bears in his bodily frame the indelible stamp of his lowly origin. Man selects only for his own good, nature only for that of the being which she tends. We can allow satellites, planets, suns, universe, nay whole systems of universe, to be governed by laws, but the smallest insect, we wish to be created at once by special act. Nothing is easier than to admit in words the truth of the universal struggle for life, or more difficult, at least I have found it so, than constantly to bear this conclusion in mind. Great is the power of steady misrepresentation. If it could be demonstrated that any complex organ existed, which could not possibly have been formed by numerous, successive, slight modifications, my theory would absolutely break down. But I can find no such case. I see no good reasons why the views given in this volume should shock the religious views of anyone. Man in his arrogance thinks himself a great work, worthy of the interposition of a deity. More humble, and I believe truer, to consider him created from animals. There is no fundamental difference between man and animals in their ability to feel pleasure and pain, happiness, and misery. Freedom of thought is best promoted by the gradual illumination of men's minds which follows from the advance of science. To kill an error is as good a service as, and sometimes even better than, the establishing of a new truth or fact. It is always advisable to perceive clearly our ignorance. I am not the least afraid to die. We are not here concerned with hopes or fears, only with truth as far as our reason permits us to discover it. We are always slow in admitting any great change of which we do not see the intermediate steps. The very essence of instinct is that it's followed independently of reason. We will now discuss in a little more detail the struggle for existence. A scientific man ought to have no wishes, no affections, a mere heart of stone. Wherever the European had trod, death seemed to pursue the aboriginal. In conclusion, it appears that nothing can be more improving to a young naturalist than a journey in distant countries. I feel most deeply that the whole subject is too profound for the human intellect. A dog might as well speculate on the mind of Newton. Let each man hope and believe what he can. But natural selection, as we shall hereafter see, is a power incessantly ready for action, and is immeasurably superior to man's feeble efforts, as the works of nature are to those of art. Only picture to yourself a nice soft wife on a sofa with good fire, and books and music. But a plant on the edge of a desert is said to struggle for life against the drought, though more properly it should be said to be dependent upon the moisture. False facts are highly injurious to the progress of science, for they often endure long, but false views, if supported by some evidence, do little harm, for everyone takes a salutary pleasure in proving their falseness. I have always maintained that, excepting fools, men did not differ much in intellect, only in zeal and hard work, and I still think there is an eminently important difference. Whilst man, however well behaved, at best is but a monkey shaved,